All right, well, good evening, church family. Thank you so much for tuning in with us this evening. And we are excited to have Todd Starnes with us this evening. We're going to get right to him and in just a moment. But I want to encourage you to take the next few seconds and go ahead and click the share button or the like button on your Facebook page and invite your followers and friends to join along with us. And go ahead and send a text message to a couple members of the church family that you know would really enjoy this conversation. And I've been looking forward to this. I know many of you have been looking forward to this as well. I received several text messages throughout the day that said, Pastor, I want you to ask Todd this and talk to Todd about that. I want to get Todd's take on this situation. And trust me, we're gonna try to get to as much of that as we possibly can. And but we also want that to be beneficial for all the folks in our church family. So if you want to go ahead and take time to share the page and invite some folks to come over and join us on Facebook or on YouTube. I know that it'll be a beneficial conversation. I also want to remind you that you can participate in the conversation. It's not just Todd and I having a conversation, but we want you to engage with us. And the way that you'll be able to do that is by making your question in the comments section. And as you post that there, then Derek and Chad will get those questions to me, and I'll ask them to Todd if we have enough time this evening, okay? So that's how you can participate in the conversation. And we would even open it up, even if you're not a member of our church family, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Todd, you can participate just the same. And we want this to be a beneficial time for all of us, as I trust that it will be, all right? So with all of that being said, we're going to switch over, and we're going to get Todd in on the conversation this evening. And Todd, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Hello, Pastor. Greetings from Memphis, Tennessee, home of Elvis and B.B. King and Dry Rub Barbecue.
Oh, man. So I have to tell you this because we had you in town last summer. It's hard to imagine, almost a year now.
Right.
And after you left, Amanda told me, she said, David, what did you do? Why did you take Todd downtown to a fish house when you could have taken him to a barbecue restaurant? And, I was so nervous to have you in town. I think I wasn't even thinking straight. So we have to get you back out here to take you to a new restaurant.
No, Pastor, I took one look at you. I'm like, oh, geez, look, this is a skinny guy. We're not going to a barbecue tonight. It's Salmon City. But it was great salmon. Don't get me wrong. Very delicious food.
Well, they put a new restaurant. It's called Derek's Barbecue. It's right on Atlantic. It's just 5 minutes from the church. And Amanda and I went and ate there last night. We were talking to the lady. They had their soft opening in February, and then all of this happened. And now they're just trying to make it by. And I tell you, they were great. They had half rack of ribs. They were meaty. They were tender. So we're taking you, all right? Amanda and I decided last night we're taking you to come to town again.
And if you guys come to Memphis, I'll take you to a salmon joint. So
no deal. No, I want to know the best places you've got. That's where
I've got a list. Trust me. So we'll take good care of you.
I know that you do. So tell us a little bit about the move. You're in Memphis. The last time you were with us, you were in New York. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right, Pastor. After 15 years of living among the indigenous liberal population in Brooklyn, I decided it was time to evacuate the city. We had been under quarantine for weeks, and it was really tough. For one thing, it's, in New York City, you live in small apartments, so you've only got so much room for your toilet paper stash, and I was running out of room. So I knew right away that, it was time to head back home to Memphis. I'd actually purchased a news radio station, and who in their right mind purchases a radio station in the middle of a global pandemic? But what are you going to do? So anyway, my furniture is somewhere between New York and Memphis. And of course, I had to get on board the airplane, and it was like a ghost town, Pastor, at LaGuardia Airport. I mean, normally that airport is packed with people, and it was really like a scene out of, a zombie apocalypse, where it was me and the TSA agents, and they were like, just go on through, It is what it is.
Are you safe now though?
More or less. It's interesting. In Memphis, it's kind of iffy. It's a great city, though. It's my hometown. So the big problem was my apartment was not ready. So I had to really live for the past week. I've been living at the Peabody Hotel, which is famous because they have the big duck march. So it's basically me and the ducks. And honest to goodness, they had a big duck march the other day, and I was literally one of three people in the lobby. It was, just hanging out. So ducks gone wild.
Well, I have to tell our church family that we owe you a big thank you because you're actually playing the services and the sermons that are preached here at First Baptist. You're playing on the radio station there in Memphis.
That's right. We're really excited. Our radio station is what we call a heritage radio station. It was one of the very first radio stations in Memphis, and it played. It was one of the first radio stations to play Johnny Cash and Elvis and BB King. So it used to be called the Mighty 990. It's AM 990. And we have a block of Sunday programming we call the Almighty 990,
Yes,
which is a bunch of church services. And as soon as we got the radio station, I knew we were going to have you on there one way or the other.
yeah. Well, thank you. We really do appreciate it. We still have to come up with a good name for our radio program because we haven't got that far yet. So I've told Derek, I've given him a special assignment of getting us a good name, but we're open for whatever recommendations you might have.
It's got to be cool and it's got to be hip, Pastor Dave. I mean, your Long Beach street cred is on the line.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's always a joy to be able to talk with you, Todd. It really is. It always lightens my heart. It really does. But we want to talk a little bit about the situation that's happening in the country, obviously, with the COVID-19, the shutdowns, and then religious liberty is where I want to get to. So we'll start with just a couple questions. Because to me, I have people that I've talked to that say, they believe this is the worst thing since the Black Plague. And then I talk to other people who, they think it's all just made up and there's nothing there at all. And both parties feel like they're just really frustrated with where we are. As far as the shutdowns, the amount of news that we're receiving, the strategies for moving forward. Can you tell us a little bit about your sense of where we are and the likelihood of getting back to some kind of normal?
Yeah, that's there's a lot to unpack there, Pastor. It's tough. I mean, there is some sort of a virus. I don't think anyone really knows the extent to which to where we are. Is it like the Spanish flu? Where does this rank in the great plagues of our time? But I think right now, the issue is it is impacting people. It's impacting lives. And honestly, the entire country has been shut down. I realized early on in New York City that the way the mainstream media was advancing the narrative was not exactly accurate. And I pointed that out just by going down to my local hospital and showing people on video, this is not some sort of, a scene out of the apocalypse. Everyone's calm. There were plenty of hospital beds still available. And of course, at that time, you had our government leaders saying, well, we have to have field hospitals. We have to have a medical ship. Well, it turns out they did not have to have those things after all. But again, I think those of us in New York City who were, again, boots on the ground understood, that yes, this is serious. And how do you cover the disease without marginalizing it? And of course, if just one person is suffering, that's one person too many. So where are we now? Well, we know that the CDC, and we've confirmed this with our own reporting on our show, that the CDC is now categorizing every death as a COVID-19 death, even if that person has not been tested. So the issue now is the truth. And the truth is very relevant here, especially in these kinds of situations, Pastor, because ultimately that data is important. That data is life and death. And unfortunately, the question that has not been asked by the mainstream media, and it needs to be asked, exactly how many people have died solely from the virus and how many people have died from some sort of an underlying condition? We don't have those numbers, and that is pretty disturbing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too that the impact, not even just from the health standpoint, but the impact that these shutdowns have had, even with the astronomical rise in unemployment. You were very early talking about that on your radio stations and Twitter pages. I think I saw this last week, 26 million, over 26 million jobs have been lost by this. So sometimes when folks hear us talking about, oh, it's about the loss of jobs, and they feel like we're saying all we care about is money or the economy. What's your kind of response to that, and saying this isn't, it's not simply about the money, but it's about getting back to some kind of livelihood for men and women in difficult situations?
That's right. And this really is, for lack of a better term, the great equalizer, because we're talking about Republicans and Democrats who are unemployed, throwing a bunch of independents too, and even libertarians. I mean, it's really bad out there. And when you step back, you realize the government's not exactly doing a very good job of this. And we know that because, out of the $2 trillion stimulus package, only $356 billion went to we the people. And so my question is, where did the rest of the money go to? They said, well, we run out of money to help the small businesses. No, no, you did not. We gave, we authorized, our leaders authorized $2 trillion. Where is that money? And especially in New York City, it's very evident, because the reality is many of those businesses are not going to reopen. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in New York City that will be unemployed, that have lost their jobs. And those $1,200 checks, I don't know what it's like at First Baptist Long Beach, but you know what? You still got to pay your rent. You still got to pay your mortgage. You got to put food on the table. That money, that's probably long gone by now for a lot of people. So where are we now? Well, I believe that the catchphrase is the cure can't be worse than the virus. Well, that's true. And the reality is, if in fact this country plunges into a depression, you are going to see many more people die from lack of health care, from lack of food, from lack of proper housing and hygiene, and the list goes on and on and on. We're living in a very precarious state right now. And I do understand that a lot of these states like Georgia, Tennessee, where I live now, South Carolina, reopening for business. But the reality is a lot of states are not, and they're not letting those residents know when they will reopen. That's a big problem.
Right, absolutely. I think too, how, which I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about this, but I feel like when someone says to someone like me, who I say, let's reopen, let's get back to some kind of new normal. I recognize it won't be the way that it was, but it should be at least something. And then they say, well, all you care about is the money. But to me, it's not really about that. To me, it's about helping people get to a place where they can take pride, responsibility. They can have outlets. We were doing research today that the sense of isolation that this shutdown and the stay-at-home orders has caused. And so just some statistics for you. Then I just want to get your thoughts back on these statistics. Sure. So the Orange County Register ran an article this week that said there's been an 8,000% increase in suicide hotline calls in Los Angeles. The Dallas-Fort Worth ABC outlet said that there was a spike in severe child abuse cases. On ABC, they said that there's a spike in drug overdoses. On that was an article they ran on April the 12th. I was telling you before the show that, I was informed yesterday that last night there were the most arrests in Long Beach that there has been in months, specifically because of violent crimes. And so when we say things like, we got to get back to some kind of normal, it's not simply economic that we're talking. It's not because we want to pad our pockets. It's because we've removed people from social structures, faith structures, outlets, schools, and everything else. And it's caused a greater stress on the family unit. Talk to us a little bit about those things.
Well, no doubt about it. It's interesting though, and if you're looking for maybe a glimmer of good news out of all of those stats, there's another survey that was done, and they determined that more young people under the age of 17 are actually doing quite well. They are happier now that they are staying at home and spending time with mom and dad, and I think that's that's a good thing. But by and large, You're right. We're looking at an epidemic of suicide and depression. Many people, for example, let's say Alcoholics Anonymous, you're not able to go to those meetings. We're talking about some at-risk people, and that's not going to get any better until we're able to reopen our country. I will say this, Pastor. A lot of those folks who are saying what you're saying, well, it's all about the money. The reality is, those people saying that on TV, they're still getting a paycheck,
Right.
and those network stars that you see anchoring the news, they talk about, well, you have to be socially distancing yourself. Okay, well, how do they do their makeup? I mean, they have the perfect makeup, and they have the hair, and you're telling me that all of those news anchors actually have blonde hair by naturally? I mean, that is a miracle. I don't judge. I'm just pointing out things here. But again, it's this idea of hypocrisy. For example, there were several of the news anchors, and they said they had the virus, and of course, everybody put them on their prayer list, and everybody feels bad for them. And then it turns out they're walking around their neighborhoods without their masks on, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, who are you? Your diseased breath. I mean, what are you doing to people? And again, it's this idea, if it really is that bad, why aren't you like quarantined like the rest of us? So it's a little frustrating.
Absolutely. In your experience, what is the likelihood that the kind of statistics that these articles have tried to point out, what are the likelihood that the policymakers are actually influenced by those kind of numbers? So are they? And then if they are, what's the likelihood that they are?
I don't. I'm not sure they are, to be honest. I think this is, and this is probably the worst part of it all. It's not about the virus anymore. This is all about politics now. Everything you hear from the coronavirus press briefings to what you see on the news, what you read online, it's all about politics, and it really has been for the past couple of weeks here. And I've been asking people this question, newsmakers, this question on my radio show, and they hem and haw, but they pretty much all agree with me that ultimately these stay-at-home orders, this is really about trying to destroy and take down a presidency more so than anything else right now.
Yeah, I was had a conversation last week about in that same way, and it said the conversation was, if the left can keep Christians and the churches from getting behind President Trump, then he can't be elected again,
It's true.
because that was really what got him elected the first time. Do you feel like that's accurate?
Oh, 1,000%, Pastor. And keep in mind that President Trump did not win the popular vote. Okay, that's something that people need to understand. That's why the question now is, what does this country look like in November? I mean, are we talking about a catastrophic economic situation where those 26 million people, and trust me, Pastor, that number, it's probably going to be 30 million by next Thursday. I mean, let's get real. What is that going to look like? And money is important. Money is, that's how you guys pay your light bill. You don't pay your light bill by, by doing good deeds to the utility company. You pay your bill. Everybody's got to have money. That's the way the country runs.
Right.
So we're going to see how all of this plays out. But I'm pretty concerned that if we do not reopen this country and reopen it quickly, because again, this is not going to like just turn the light switch on. It's a process. It's going to take time, and we already know that some states, New York, and I'm not sure about California where you guys are in that mix, but it's going to take some time for us to get back to normal. I don't want a new normal. I want the old normal. What is the new normal? Let me tell you something, Pastor. This is about socialism. When I wrote a book about this, and you guys were so gracious to have me down to the church speaking about this. But when you look at all these policies, you can't plant a garden in Michigan. You can't go fishing. What was it Henry Kissinger said, Pastor? Henry Kissinger, the former Secretary of State, said, whoever controls the food supply controls the people. And when you see those bread lines down in San Diego, not too far from you guys, in San Antonio in Texas, man, that's heartbreaking. As an American citizen, a freedom-loving American citizen, that is a heartbreaking thing to see.
Absolutely. That's a great lead to the second kind of conversation we wanted to have about what is the line between the government's job to serve and protect and then government overreach. So their idea of what is good for you and good for me and good for us versus our own responsibility to, measure risk, be careful, be good neighbors, but go about our lives. What's, in your opinion, what's that line look like?
Well, in the socialist world, government is like the parent. Government knows best. Government knows everything, and that is not the case in our kind of society. I had a lady call into the show yesterday. She is a hairdresser from right outside of Portland, Maine. And she was telling me her story. She's self-employed. She wasn't able to get the stimulus check like a lot of other small businesses. She doesn't know what to do. She's got no money left, and she doesn't understand why she can't reopen her salon, because she knows that she can be proactive in making sure that she protects herself and her clients. And it's this idea of trust. The government doesn't trust us to do the right thing here, and that's really, I think, at the heart of it, it is a trust issue. But you're right, there has been massive government overreach here. When you look at what happened down at that church in Mississippi, where you had all these elderly people in their cars just worshiping, they were doing everything they had to do by the CDC guidelines, and they get slapped with a $500 fine. I mean, is that the kind of America you want to live in? We had a mom in Idaho get hauled off of a playground charged with trespassing. I mean, that's not the kind of America that I want to live in. And Pastor, I say this a lot. I understand that the church, and the church by and large, we have listened to and we have respected, and to some extent we have obeyed our government leaders. But at some point, we all have to go back to the church house, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the plan. It's in the Constitution.
Right. That's a thing that weighs heavy on our hearts. And we were all this last week, starting last weekend, our pastoral staff team here with our deacons, we reached out to several other pastors in the area, beginning to formulate a strategy that says we can't and we won't stay this way. This is not acceptable to us. And so with that kind of that as another transition, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about how you see this affecting religious liberty. And so in light of COVID-19, how would you rate the overall state of religious liberty in the United States?
Well, I think we're dealing with some pretty dark times. The idea that for example, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where you can go to a drive-through liquor store, you can go to church. Those kinds of decisions are frightening, and I appreciate what a federal judge said when he stepped in to intervene. He said, "You know what? If a liquor store is essential, then so is church on Easter Sunday." I agree with that. Now, there have been some pastors that have been grandstanding, and personally, I believe that prudence, it's always good to be prudent, and no need to put people in, unnecessarily in harm's way. And I believe, quite frankly, that the grandstanding has really hurt the overall cause, because by and large, we had Pastor Paul Chappell on our radio show today. He pastors a small church just a little north of you, there in Lancaster, California. Hello, Pastor Paul. Uh, and but he said, and he agrees. He said, we've got to start having that conversation. And he pointed something out that I really never thought much about. A lot of these restaurants and the department stores, they all have lobbyists that lobby on their behalf. We don't have that as Christians by and large. We don't pay lobbyists to go and speak out on our behalf. But there's going to have to be a conversation about that. And it troubles me that the first place that they cracked down on was the church house. They wanted to shut down the church house. And anytime anybody wants to do that, it gives me pause.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I am appreciative and I respect the decisions that individual pastors made to do what they felt like was best for their congregations and also model a spirit of submissiveness toward the government. But I just wonder at how long this goes in light of the governors who would perhaps have ill or evil intention saying, oh, well, we got them right where we want them now. So do you feel like those kind of things are at play, or is this like it's going to get eventually back, but we don't know when?
No, I think there's a little bit of that at play. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we were having a big national conversation about socialism before this all popped up. I mean, this does seem to be the raging debate of our time. And honestly, I think the American people have been getting a small taste of that right now. This idea that that you stand in a bread line, that you don't necessarily have rights, that you have curfews, you can get arrested for going to paddleboard and right off of Malibu. It's just silly. But at the same time, this is what you can expect in a socialist society. And I have to apologize for the rumblings in the background, Pastor. My internet is not here, so I'm in the atrium of my apartment building here in Memphis. So I just hope somebody doesn't come through in a bathrobe or something.
No, it's fine. It'll make for great comments on the feed. So it'll be great.
Somebody will get put on the church prayer list.
So we'll just change ideas a little bit here. Our school kids, before we went to online learning, they were working on Great America projects, and their teachers had assigned them the job or the homework assignment of identifying great historic things that our country has been able to accomplish, whether it be a monument or a person, a president, whatever it may be. So the question came in, could you address our students on why America is still great?
Oh, I believe America is the most exceptional nation on the planet, and I've never lost hope in America. We hit these rough patches, and no doubt we're in a rough patch, but it's American ingenuity that gets us through the day, and it really is this idea of a belief in God. This again, not everybody in America is a Baptist. Not everybody is non-denominational. So we all kind of come from these different faith backgrounds. But those of us in the Christian world, I think, or at least here in this country, we're able to focus on this idea, this concept that we are unique in the sense that we are a nation that is created under God. Our founding documents are flavored with Judeo-Christian values and concepts. And it's that idea, I think, that really propels us forward. And when you look at American young people, and specifically Christian American young people that are out there doing things for their neighbors, bringing food to first responders, making masks, in their homes, with their parents. Those are the stories that sort of get missed, and as we're talking about, the big political issues of the day. But you want to know why America is great. It's because and Ronald Reagan pointed this out. There's this great speech. Ronald Reagan, talks about this concept of, freedom is not something that's passed along genetically. This is something that has to be taught. We have a responsibility. Moms and dads have a responsibility to teach their kids about America and why America is important. But Ronald Reagan said this, and it's a quote that's a lot of folks don't really remember. But he said, American exceptionalism starts at the kitchen table first. That's where it starts, not in the public school, but at the kitchen table. And I think that's a great reminder because you know what? All those folks making fun of the homeschool crowd, they're not laughing, are they? Because they're homeschooled.
Oh, that's so true. And
I'll say one other thing. Man, that's going to be tough for the Scripps Howard because usually it's the homeschoolers that always win that thing. So the public school kids may have a fighting chance. Nothing against homeschool crowd. We love homeschoolers.
What is one of the questions came in and said, in light of all these different things that seem really big on global levels, national levels, even state levels, what is something that we can do individually as believers that can help?
Well, I think that, our own personal walk with the Lord becomes very important at this stage, especially, in this sense of isolation. But I think that we have to look for those opportunities to reach out to others. Social media has really been a lifesaver for a lot of folks. They didn't have this back during the Spanish flu. So we are really blessed that we can actually get out there and communicate and, and reach out to folks. And I think it's important for us to pay attention, see who might be needing that extra bit of attention or, a word of encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll let you get out of here on this last one. Okay. Is there just a greeting, a word of encouragement that you would like to bring to our church family? And if so, would you mind taking a few minutes and giving us just a word of encouragement?
Well, Pastor, I love you guys. It's a great congregation you have down there, and I had so much fun hanging out with y'all. And I'm reminded of something that I wrote in my last book, and it's really kind of, I wouldn't say it's become a prophetic word, but it's just a good word for where we are right now. This idea that that when the nation goes through a difficult time, for whatever reason, they always turn back to the church house. And how many of us have been praying and hearing our pastors preach about this great awakening, this great revival that we've been hoping our country, experiences again. And you wonder, in a great crisis like this, are people going to return to the church? And I believe they are. And I believe that's evident based on the numbers of people watching online, people looking for answers. There's a lot of great uncertainty. People ask me in Brooklyn, I'm walking down the street, are you nervous? No, not really, because, my hope is built not on, this virus, but on a relationship with Christ. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to look for ways to minister to people, for us to reach out to our communities, as we all go through this. And I think we have to be prepared for the day that those church house doors are once again reopened to welcome in all those people that are looking for answers.
Yes, sir. Well, Todd, thank you so much for your time this evening. It was a blessing, like always. And, while the flights are cheap, we're going to try to get you out here and get you to some of that barbecue. All right.
Hey, I'm all over that now, Pastor. And throwing an In-N-Out burger, and I might take Greyhound. Well, maybe not, but.
Thank you, Todd, so much for your time, and please stay safe.
Please give your family my best.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
All right, church family, I want to thank you so much for tuning in with us this evening, and I trust that was a blessing to you. And I want to close just with a word of encouragement to you from me. And sometimes in difficult times like this, we can always struggle or wrestle with the idea of how can we help? What can we do? All of this seems really big. First of all, we should pray for men like Todd who are in position of political influence inside of our country. We should ask the Lord to protect them, watch over them. I'm not thinking of just media personality types. I'm talking about senators, congressmen. This reminds me of the importance that it is for us to vote in line with our Christian worldviews. That we should elect men to office who will seek first of all the Lord. The Bible says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." And we want to have men who lead our country in a way back to the Lord that's pleasing and honoring to Him. That reminds me of that, first of all. Second, it reminds me of where we are personally, individually. Reminded of that passage in Jeremiah chapter 29, where Jeremiah tells the people who are left in captivity, stay there in captivity, seek the good of the city, plant gardens, build homes, paint walls, help your neighbors, be friendly, be kind, and look after the good of the city. I feel like that's our responsibility here as a church. I feel like it's our responsibility where God has planted us, where God has placed us, where God has put you in your own neighborhood, with the neighbors that you have, with the friendships that you have, with the coworkers that you have, that you and I might seek good for them. And in seeking good for them, that they might see the good works that we do, and then as a result, they would glorify our Father which is in heaven. We don't want to do good for people so they think well of us. We want to do good for people that they may think well of our Father which is in heaven. That when they ask us, what reason do we have for hope and joy and peace and good works? That we might be able to lead them to God our Father. That we might point them to Jesus, who did good for us at our time of need. That's what I want to remind you of this evening. I want to remind you to make sure that even in moments like this, you heed Todd's advice, that you're walking with the Lord personally, that you're spending time in prayer, and that you're making those prayers petitions to the Lord that he might use you, that he might use me, and that he might use us for his honor and for his glory in whatever way that may look. So thank you so much for tuning in this evening. We're going to look back for you tomorrow right here. I want to remind you of a couple things. First of all, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will have our church prayer meeting. We'll put the Zoom number for how you can participate in that prayer meeting up on the Facebook page at 8:30. So you can join us that way. We don't put it up right now because we don't want it to stay up for the entire evening. There's literally thousands of people that come through our church Facebook page and web pages. And we want to make sure that prayer time is reserved for us as members. So there's got to be a little intentionality in finding it so we can invite them to join. But I want you to be with us. It's probably my most favorite interaction with you during these times is through that prayer time. It's always enjoyable. I love to listen to our men and women bring requests and then prayers to the Lord. It's just really encouraging. So I want to encourage you to be a part of that. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then also tomorrow night, First Baptist Family Game Night. And we're going to play a version of Pictionary, okay? So that's going to be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss that. 6 o'clock, that's tomorrow night, Pictionary. And then Sunday, kids service at 10, regular service at 11, and then our evening service at 5. At 11 and 5, we're studying the book of Philippians, which of course is the book of joy and how we might have joy in difficult seasons and in difficult times. Paul writes the book of Philippians from prison. He's incarcerated. It feels a little bit like what you're going through right now, locked in your home. I promise you it wasn't as bad as what the Apostle Paul was experiencing. And yet he says, rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice in the Lord always. There's joy in going and spending time with Jesus. All right, so let me encourage you to be part with us this weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. Please stay safe. If you have a need, please call your deacon, your connection group leader, one of us as staff members. We'll be happy to help you in any way that we can. God bless you, church family. I sure do love you. We'll see you tomorrow.